Here we go again. Claude Opus 4.5 just dropped, and it's like these models are popping out every other week. It's driving me nuts. But here's what I want to know. Can this model actually build a real full stack application from front end to back end, not a to-do list, not a landing page? I'm talking authentication, database, file storage, all that works. So what I did was I built an image-to-SFX generator. You upload an image, it creates a sound effect for it, and I paired Opus 4.5 with a new backend service called Insforge. And honestly, I'm not quite sure what I witnessed. 0 lines of backend code, 0 configuration, it all just worked out of the box. You know what, let me just show you what happened. Full transparency, I haven't tested out Claude Opus 4.5 just yet, and Insforge is completely new to me. This could go horribly wrong, but YOLO, am I right? Let's see what the model can actually do under pressure. First thing, I'm creating a project on Insforge and connecting the MCP server to Claude Code. This is important because the MCP gives Claude all the documentation and tools to handle backend operations directly, meaning hopefully from this point onwards, I shouldn't need to touch Insforge manually. Well, you know, that's kind of the promise anyway. Here's the thing though about building full stack application with AI. Most of them turn into AI slop. It just consists of like generic components, broken logic, code that technically runs but feel like it's assembled by an unpaid intern. You know what I mean? So I developed a system to avoid that. Step 1, the project spec. Create a high-level overview of every feature. Step 2, I have Claude Code create an implementation order based on the project spec. This helps me determine which features to build first, what can be built in parallel, and what depends on what. This is crucial because AI tends to jump around randomly if you don't give it some kind of structure. Step 3, and this is where it gets interesting. I have Claude generate detailed plans for each step, always referencing back to the original spec. Before I dive in to set up the backend, first, the boring stuff. Dependencies, providers, environment variables, you know, all that jazz. All right, the boring stuff is done. Let's see some magic. I'll have Claude create the backend implementation plan. But before I run it, quick detour to grab my Insforge project URL and API key from the dashboard and just pasting that right into my environment file. Now watch this. Claude immediately reaches out for the Insforge MCP. And look at my dashboard here. Database, tables, indices, just appearing. I didn't write a schema. I didn't configure anything. This is what I mean by not having to think about the backend. It just happens naturally. Next up, authentication. And if you set up OAuth before, you know exactly what I mean when I say this is usually when the pain begins. Last time when I did Google OAuth, I had to dig into Google Cloud Platform, create credentials, configure a consent screen, set up client secrets. It's a whole thing. With Insforge, I just implement the plan. OAuth for Google and GitHub already configured. Auth UI components already there. I didn't need to set up a single credentials manually. At this point, I'm just rolling with the vibes. Now for the core feature, actually generating sound effects from image. Here's how I'm thinking about this. Gemini looks at the image and describes what it should sound like. That description goes to 11 labs, text to SFX model, outcomes, and MP3. Image in, sound out, 2 AI models working in sequence. And here's a workflow tip. Because these 2 integrations don't share any code, I can implement them in parallel. 2 plans running at the same time. This is where that implementation order I created earlier actually pays off. On top of that, I'll also implement a plan to create server action that combines these 2 APIs together. Let's see if this actually produces something usable. At least we know the sound generation works. Auth is done, backend is done. Now I actually need a way to use this thing. The UI needs to handle image upload, drag and drop, or file picker, show a preview, display generation progress, and lets you play and download the result. Now here's a tip that's going to save you hours. Use the Playwright MCP. It lets Claude see exactly what it's building in the browser. No more screenshotting your UI and pasting it into the chat. Claude just looks at it, sees what's wrong, and fixes it. I do have a full tutorial on this if you want to go deeper. Links in the description. Alright, the first hiccup. Gemini 3 Pro keeps telling me I've hit my quota limit. Even though I'm on the paid tier, I haven't used it at all. I spent way too long troubleshooting this. Billing's connected, AI Studio says I'm on tier 1, doesn't matter. It just won't work. Whatever. Gemini 2.5 Pro it is. Honestly, for image to text, it's going to do the job just fine. Moving on. Alright, moment of truth. Image goes in, Gemini describes it, 11 Labs generates the sound, and we get the audio out, and it actually works. But refresh the page, gone. All of it. Not exactly what I wanted. I see that the generations are saved in Insforge, which is correct, but there's no way to get it back into the UI right now. This is a demo, not an app. Let's fix that. You know what this needs? This needs a sidebar. A full history of all your generations so far so that you can go back to anything. And unfortunately, this is where Opus 4.5 let me down. I gave it everything. Screenshots, Playwright MCP, so it can see the UI directly. Clear description of the problem. Collapse state alignment, padding inconsistencies, classic Tailwind stuff. It just couldn't get there. Close, but not quite. Every fix broke something else. So I had to do something radical. I opened the file, and yeah, I wrote the Tailwind classes myself. I know, shocking. Writing code in 2025, almost 2026 by the way. But here's the thing, Opus 4.5 handled the backend beautifully. Complex auth, database schema, API integration, flawless. But fiddly Tailwind classes, alright, it works, but let's be honest here, it looks like an AI made it. And I mean that in the worst way. This header, janky. The generated page has this blue-purple tint that doesn't match anything. You know the color scheme I'm talking about? The default AI gradient that every generated UI seems to have. I can't be the only one who's sick of this. And there's a UX issue here as well. When you submit an image, it clears the whole page instead of just navigating to the new generation. Alright, moment of truth. Random image, drag it in, and generate. You know, the sound effects is not going to win any awards here, but that's on 11 Labs, not the app. Let's check Insforge real quick. Image is in the right bucket. Audio is in the right bucket. Every generation tied to the correct user. I didn't have to write a single line of backend code. It just works. Opus 4.5 plus Insforge is kind of ridiculous for full stack prototyping. The backend was completely invisible. That promise was delivered. I'm curious about how Sonnet 4.5 would handle the same build. Same app, same stack, would the trade-offs be any different? If you want to see more comparisons and builds like this, subscribe. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.